especially for those uh, bumped up just prior to COVID, right at 1,400, because we added the second Spanish Mass, and that growth was almost entirely in that second Spanish Mass. Then COVID happened, and we had 10 people at Mass. and then 350, and then 750, and then 1,000. But since then, we've continued to grow. Every year, our basis has grown. We got back up to 1,400 as our norm, then 1,500 was our norm, then 1,600 plus is now our norm. And last weekend, we've been averaging in these last few months 1,700 to 1,800 people at Mass over the course of the 5 Masses. How that has affected Mass attendance is that, is it about 20% of our Masses? Is that the figure?
Are over 80%.
Are over 80%. The rule of thumb in church world is that you want your capacity, where people start to feel uncomfortable is when capacity is, there's more than 80% full. People want to be able to come in and find seats and not feel frustrated, so that's kind of a rule of thumb. But about 20% of our Masses are either at that capacity or in fact over that capacity. The 1:30 Mass is regularly over 600 people. We have 480 seats in our church. We have a legal capacity of 660 people. So the fire marshal is not going to stop us for having standing room, but in fact it becomes very, it's a good problem to have. One of the things that we cannot do is add more Masses. And I say that because the bishop has told me, I don't want you to add more Masses. I want this parish and Crozet to be able to be handled by 2 priests. One of the reasons for that is we have 88 priests who are in our diocese, who are part of our diocese, and that includes some of our international priests who are now incarnated in our diocese. We also have 59 priests who are in our diocese under an R1 visa, but the R1 visa is only good for 5 years, and we have gone through a whole series of issues with the R1 visa, and we're kind of going to go back into that. So after somebody is here for 5 years, they have to go back to their country for a full year before they can come back. And so we had, several years ago, we had about 5 parishes that their priests, their pastors, were not able to be in their parish for a total of a full year. And so the fact that we have 2 priests here right now is wonderful, but it's not guaranteed that the 2 parishes would have 2 priests to do the 8 Masses that have to happen on a weekend, which is one of the reasons why we can't add more Masses. It just is not prudent to do that. But one of the things that the diocese will do as they look at our parish, as they look at building, when you're spending the amount of money that we'll be spending, an estimate that we had just on the HVAC for this room is about a little under $300,000. And then for the hall, the church, it was about $600,000 just for the HVAC. But they're going to ask, as they have done at other parishes, Holy Family in Virginia Beach was a good one. There was an article in the Catholic Virginian. they wanted just to replace their HVAC system. And the diocese asked them, well, what other things do you need to address? And they had an issue like we had, that they needed to add more seating, that it was not sustainable over the long haul. And so they asked them to look at that. They also asked them to look at other things in terms of how churches were designed in 1979, which is when ours was designed. It was consecrated in 1980. But when it was designed, there were certain things that the larger church said were okay, but there's been a reconsideration by the bishops of the United States, and there's been some redirection in terms of the document that how churches are built. And so back under Bishop DiLorenzo, he said, I'm not going to make any parish go into a capital campaign to address these issues, but if they go into a capital campaign, I'm going to ask them to address these issues. And that's been the same policy that Bishop Nestow has followed as well. So there are other issues about our church that would not have been approved now if our church was designed now. One of that is that the access of the church is meant to have a center access that is focused on the altar. It's not supposed to have a bifurcated focus where the altar and the ambo are somehow co-equal. They're not. The ambo leads to the altar. The ambo leads, the word leads to the Eucharist. The Eucharist is the focus. And so they've asked churches to make that the focus. They've also asked churches to make sure that the Eucharist, the reserved Eucharist, is visible from the main church. Our Eucharistic chapel, again, prior to COVID, was not visible from our church. It was actually I always said I would play a game with some of our visitors to have them see if they could find the Eucharist. But anyways, COVID, we could not have people in that small space, so that was one of the reasons we brought the Eucharist back into the larger chapel. But the diocese is going to ask us to make the Eucharist a more permanent and central figure in the church. Also, part of that is the need for kneelers, because although there was a feeling among people in the church back in the 70s that there might be a return to standing as the ordinary posture of the Eucharist, which comes from us from the Council of Nicaea, the American bishops examined that, and they said no. In fact, we're going to say because of the decrease in the belief in the Eucharist among Catholics who are able to articulate the Catholic belief in the Eucharist is now down to 33% of Catholics that attend Mass. And so it was felt that the idea of worshiping the Eucharist during the Eucharistic prayer was central, so there would be a need for kneelers to be reinstated. That has happened in almost all of the churches in the Diocese of Richmond. We're actually one of the few churches that doesn't have kneelers at this point, because they've all kind of gone through this process before. Okay? One of the let me see. So that kind of brings us here, kind of how we got here. Let me see, have I covered everything?
Yeah.
Okay. The only thing, the last line was, doing nothing is not an option, okay? We're at a point where if we do nothing, we probably would lose our health and safety ability to have people in the building. And so we would not be able to have Mass in the church because it just would be too painful during the winter and during the summer to do that. So we actually have to do something. In terms of, Robert's not here.
I don't see him,
No, he told me he couldn't come today. But do we have
Kathy, I mean, I think
Kathy?
would you-
Yeah.
Kathy Bruce?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you kind of talk to folks real quick about how the Finance Council has been a part of this process?
Sure.
Thank you.
Come again?
Yeah, you need to talk to the mic.
Great.
Just for those who don't know Kathy, Kathy is the current chair of the Finance Council. And she's been on the Finance Council now for a year and a half, okay? But she got discerned as the chair this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi. So the Finance Council is involved in the renovation because we want to be sure that we can fund what we're doing and that we're responsible caretakers of the parish's funds and we're spending wisely, doing what we need to do. And Monsignor had asked originally the whole parish what were our priorities, and then Tony and his group came and did a study to see what's feasible. And the feasibility study showed us that we could potentially raise $3 million and up to maybe $3.5 million if the campaign goes really well. And then we would be able to borrow up to $1.5 million to give us potentially $4.5 million as a, as to look for budgeting reasons after the capital campaign. So Monsignor had prices, estimates for the worship space, for the new narthex, for the changing restrooms that do need to, there's many things that need to be approached, but with the amount of money that we expect to raise with the capital campaign, it looks like we should be able to do the worship space as designed now, and then also the narthex, the new narthex, so that you come into the church with the central aisle, but not to really do everything we want to do with the narthex eventually. Maybe, just get the structure built with building everything for the renovation of the worship center. And the rest of the projects are going to need to wait right now, except for this space, which we're going to use as our worship center during the renovation, as well as the parish activity center. But this space, we have funds that will probably take care of that well for us with the HVAC, and then making this a more usable space. And this is important to do not only because of the worship space during the renovation, but this is a moneymaker for the parish because it is rented out a lot for celebrations, and it needs some upgrades to work very well for that purpose. So that's kind of where we are with it. And then, and we really have been looking at it prayerfully as well as, it's all the finance committee looking at the money, but we're also looking at it as how we can improve our worship as a community. And I think we've come to the conclusion that the new spaces are going to be able to aid us in how well we're able to worship as a Catholic community. Is there anything else?
No, you did a great job. You did a great job. Just in terms, just in terms of kind of the steps that we're going. So based on the first two town halls, we kind of narrowed the scope of what we did, and so that was what Kathy was talking about. There are some things that people still have some enthusiasm for, like the renovation of the bathrooms. I'm speaking specifically of the women's room. That has come up again and again. But we really want to focus on this. If you remember, we kind of identified, if money were no object, that we have about $6 million worth of need of unmet renovations that need to be done, that would include the parking lot, security, bathrooms, security for the offices, and for the building at night as it's being used. So we just can't do all of that. So that's part of kind of the narrowing of this. Also, where we go from here is we're beginning the active phase of the campaign. We can still, part of our meeting here today is to still kind of, tweak what the case for the campaign is. But over the next few months, I'll be working with Tony here, Radowski from Greater Mission, to talk to some of our leading donors to make leadership gifts to get the campaign started. And those conversations will happen during the month of April, and I think ending in the beginning of May, right? And then we would be then working with small groups of parishioners at people's homes. We would invite you all or other people to host members of the parish there, that we could have smaller conversations with people to talk about making sacrificial gifts that would allow us to go forward. By July, we would be then doing an in-pew solicitation, much like we do the annual appeal. There would be an in-pew solicitation. In terms of this with the Hispanic community came back to us and said, that's not the way we raise money. And so we have another alternative for you. And so, and what the leadership of the Hispanic community and something we had maybe 120 representatives of the adults for the Spanish Town Hall meeting. There's great enthusiasm for this, but it's really amazing, is that they want to do a second collection every week for 78 weeks and make a commitment of $25 to $50 a week as their giving, which would raise close to $1 million for the parish of the $3 million. When you consider maybe their capacity, that really is tremendous generosity that would be maybe outside of what Tony would say would be their researchable capacity to be as a part of the parish. So that's something that I wanted you to note as well. Then in May and June, we would also start negotiating a contract with a contractor and do a design build. I've done a lot of projects over the years, and also talking with the folks at the diocese. I am a huge enemy of, and my apologies to all architects here, to the old-fashioned way in which you do a building project, which is you hire the architect, you get an architectural contract, they design a building, they design the building so you can't afford it, then you hire the contractor tells you you can't afford it, then you pay the architect again to redesign the building to something you can afford. And what you do with the design build is you hire the contractor, the architect is a subcontractor of the contractor, and they design a building to a not to exceed budget, and that's the contract you sign with the contractor. If there are cost overruns, they have to be approved by the building committee, and they're not, but if you, once they sign that, they promise to build this building at this cost, and if they have cost over what it costs them, that's their cost, not our cost. The only way the price goes up is if we sign another document saying that we want more than what we asked for initially. So that is where potentially, if more money were to come in the fundraising, instead our push goal was $3.5 million, and we decide that we want to do that security for the offices. That's important to us. We want to do the bathrooms. We want to add the bathrooms in the narthex so that children are not being sent down the hall, and it's more secure that way. So those are things that could be decided later on that would be a part of a decision to spend not extra money, or we could decide, no, we instead of $1.5 million in debt, we want to handle $1 million of debt. So all of that's part of the discussion that would happen depending on how the fundraising went forward. Okay? Just so you know, in terms of the fundraising goal, our current budget, it looks like we'll be bringing in just under $1.3 million this year as our current offertory. And our budget for next year looks like it'll be just over $1.3 million. So a $1.5 million borrowing represents just a little bit more than 1 year's worth of income. The rule of thumb is that a parish can afford 2 times your annual income in terms of being able to finance that over time. But we wanted to be more conservative, and so that's the number we're looking at. The number that generally rule of thumb in terms of your capacity to raise is 3 times your annual income, which would be for us $3.9 million. But again, we wanted to be more conservative, and with Tony doing the feasibility study, that's why we said $3 million as what we would set as the base of the campaign. I wanted to go, we would also have to start diocesan approval by going to BARC. And they would have to approve both our financing, and so we can't get them to approve our financing until we have a third of the money for the campaign in hand. So that would mean $1.5 million would need to be in hand for the campaign. We could have the other 1.5 pledged, and then we could have a plan to borrow the other 1.5. That's the point that they would approve our financing. They would also be an approval process on what we're actually doing. They get pretty involved. When I built the addition at St. Bede's, we had a conference room, and they said, that's a wonderful conference room. And I see those two closets there on either side. You need a bathroom in addition to that closet. So one can be a closet, but one has to be a bathroom. That's the level of detail that they have. They say, go back and redesign it, add that bathroom. So, I mean, the diocesan bark is made up of architects, civil engineers, and other people. So they're both balancing our ability to handle a project, but also they oversee what we do, because this belongs to not just this parish, but it belongs to the whole diocese. And so that's part of their oversight of what's happening. We'll also have to probably do a new site plan. Because there'll be additional space added with the narthex and with the apps. The city will probably require us to do a new site plan. That's a 6-month to 9-month process. Remember what I said about the HVAC? Tick, 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 tick. Okay, so all of this is, we're all trying to balance all of these things as we go forward. We did have the Spanish Town Hall, and I don't know whether you got to see it or whether you got to see the feedback. And I had a conversation with Ophelia Abundio about that. We had more than 100 adults, and then we had about 20 to 25 kids. And when I'm talking about kids, I'm not just talking about little kids, I'm talking about teenagers who were also part of the process. We had 12 tables, we had about 15. There was a great deal of enthusiasm in the room. Everyone was engaged. They were very excited. We have a couple of people who were there. Josh was there. Jason, I'm so sorry. I apologize. I've been calling you Josh all this time. Okay, so Jason and Marta, Carmen, and one of the things that was really extraordinary was the almost unanimity that was coming from the tables as well. This is the feedback that we got, and this was really coming from almost every single table. And I would say, because this was not, a select group, this kind of would represent very much the Spanish-speaking community here at St. Bede's, Incarnation, in terms of some of the things that they thought was important. Mary and Joseph being in the sanctuary with a large crucifix, kneelers in the pews, center aisle, more seating. Ash Wednesday, we had 811 people for Ash Wednesday, and then for the funeral that Wednesday afterwards, we had even more than that here. So the need, if we could get 600 seats in the church, and then the narthex could provide adequate seating so that even that flow over would not be as separated, that it would be, more of a sense for big celebrations. That would really help tremendously if we were able to do that. Improved sound system, including a sound system where the narthex is in the same time frame as the church, so that there's not a sound delay. And then there were other things about improving parking lot, increasing parking spaces. That was not listed as part of the sounds, part of the case at this point, but it was something that came up again and again. And so at this time, I'm going to ask some of our tables that have smaller numbers so that we can have larger conversations. If we could kind of gather at least in tables of maybe 8, so that there's enough conversation. So,
whatever direction.
it's like a cakewalk. Everyone needs to sit down.
There's room up here if somebody needs a spot.
But no, that's a big enough table. We all can sit down. Okay, could I have your attention just for a little bit more now that we've got kind of people at tables to do some rules. Every idea is important, so we want somebody to be recorded. Do we have a facilitator at every table? Okay, so they're going to be recording what you're saying. We want you to listen to one another and rather than challenging each other, just be able everyone to feel free to say what they need to say. We have 4 questions that we're going to be going through. So, what's your name and how long have you been coming to Incarnation? Why do you attend Incarnation and what do you like the most? What is important for you to, for parish leadership to consider about the renovated worship space? And one thing I would ask you is please take into account kind of the facts as we have them. It's different, we can't make up facts. You maybe want to be in a different world. You may want to have different things, but there are certain facts that each one of us are confronted with. That's what I'm saying. What's important for you to consider about the renovated worship center, and anything else that you feel is important to share. It would be my hope that we were able to have at least half hour with this at 8:15, and then have time then for each of the table leaders to come up and share about every table, okay? So, and then it would be my intention, like I did with the Spanish Mass, the Spanish Town Hall, is to then get a document that kind of summarizes what's happening here, and then also to both give a written report of both, and then also to do a chat online, which allows the Spanish community to hear what you've said, because we would translate it into Spanish as well. Okay? So let's go ahead and ask the table leaders to start.
can still see, but it's not only for kids, it's for the entire family. So families can be in that area. And then yeah, that's a good idea. Because it's like a glass wherein families and like little babies and kids who are like
put on like conversation at your table. Okay? And if you have to hold a mic in your hand, go ahead and do that. They're winding up.
You usually sit on the side, right? I see you. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Will. I've been in the parish 3 years, so I'm excited to be here. And at our table, we had some parishioners that have been here for 39 and 47 years, so we had a good range to work with on our discussion. So we have there's a lot of content to cover. So question number 2, why do you attend Incarnation? And overwhelmingly, our responses were about the diversity of the church, the welcoming of the church, and the social outreach and programs of the church. So those are by far some of the highest things that we prioritize on our table, and for why we continue to come back.
Sorry. Not bad. Continue.
But overall, it was just a very strong sense of home and community here, and again, welcoming. Question number 3, what is important for parish leadership to consider about the renovation of the worship center? So there was a lot of focus on our youth. So what does the worship center reflect to our youth, and what do we want our youth to see? Because we've noticed there's more younger children in this parish. We've all personally know a few people who have younger families that purposely come here because of the children. So we would like leadership to consider that. Otherwise, I think the other unanimous consent was that the ideas that are already being proposed are all very good. So they support them. And we would like leadership to obviously continue these type of programs to listen to the community and get feedback. And overall, there were some ideas about having maybe a more traditional liturgy in some sense to kind of, again, draw back some of the younger audience, or just overall, younger group of people to go back to church.
You went down a little too low.
Deep back. It wasn't? Just, there was no feedback. No.
And then, yeah, again, it was all focused on like how can we continue to draw back younger families. Anything else to share about the program or the project? I think there was some emphasis, or there was a lot of emphasis on the engagement of the Hispanic and Filipino community and how they live their faith. So that energy is really noticeable, and it's something that we should be proud of. And there's a lot of strengths that this parish has. Again, the social programs, diversity. So it's almost like how can we double down on those things and continue to grow? Does the project budget have a contingency for those overruns? And then a really important piece, and I'll finish with this, is if we're increasing seating capacity, how we must address parking and bathrooms to complement. We can't just increase that and then not have the complementary facilities to make people feel comfortable, welcome, and it's easy to go, and the logistics is smooth. So, okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Is this good?
That's better.
Oh, good. Great, good. All right, so people at our table have been here from 4 months, less than a year, 8 years, 18 years, and 10 years, and 40 years. So a pretty big range. And what we like the most is that it's a more progressive church versus traditional, contemporary, the community, the friendliness, that it's great for families, welcoming. One person was they came originally because of Monsignor McCarran, and that we've always had parishioners sing, music has been important, and the children, we have children present at Mass.
Does that mean something
That's
about
you,
that?
it's spam. Yes. I know these things, right? And then we really, through additional things and what's important, all kind of went together. And we wanted to make sure we had more room for the choir, that lighting in the parking lot is important, and the parking lot, keeping up with the parking lot, making sure that everything is very much handicapped accessible, better than it is right now, especially up on the altar, less hazards, worried about the visiting priest coming and it being an obstacle course. We'd like it to be more sacred, which might mean more artwork or just thinking about that in the design. And we'd like a better sound system, but also we'd like it quieter. All at the same time. But the quieter is to decrease the extraneous noises. There's sounds that come from out in the narthex, even when the doors are closed. And then one person, the young children are distracting, and parents aren't really being very helpful about taking them out of the space when they're being too distracting. And the kneelers are good, the central aisle is good. Can the candles be shorter in the new? This didn't come from me, who likes the candles. But can the candles be shorter because they're so hard to light right now? And someone said they and someone said they've seen some that go up and down to make it easier. And in general, our table is really happy with the plans so far. We do like our progressive church, but want to make it more sacred, needing a balance between contemporary, progressive, and traditional, and not losing all of the contemporary. And then suggested committee members should visit diocese churches that have been renovated, which I think you suggest.
I would highly recommend Our Lady of Nazareth in Roanoke. They went through a renovation that's very much like ours, where they had levels with no kneelers, things were off-centered, and the design is very reminiscent that Don Swafford came up with, is very reminiscent of the design that was eventually chosen for Our Lady of Nazareth in Roanoke. So that's just a church that I would recommend going to visit.
Monsignor, was that highlighted in Catholic Virginia?
It went through its time when it had an opening where it was highlighted, yeah. But I don't know what back issue to send you to.
There was a recent one, I think it was in Bob Beach, that was renovated, that was just in the Catholic Virginia. You're right.
That's
Holy
Holy
Family.
Family, yeah. But I would really highly recommend, because it's only an hour and 55 minutes away.
And that's all. I think everybody's pretty happy with the renovation so far, with just, a long list of things to keep in
Thank you.
touch. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Mark. To keep it going, we could not spend 5 minutes each. We're going to be here all night. So our table, we had a range of 3 to 34 years attendance. And some of the things that we like the most and reasons for attending Incarnation, through and through, a welcoming spirit and a sense of family, feels like home. One parishioner, just his first time here after being at a couple other local churches, Sandy McLaughlin welcoming him as a greeter. Other reasons that we like it, we're growing again, which is great. It feels alive. There are more families than there had been in some more recent years. Very strong sense of community, along with a great emphasis on social outreach. That has for decades been one of Incarnation's calling cards, is our focus on social ministry. But also adjunct forums available for faith formation, such as Disciples Course, and then finally the chaos of young kids at Mass, also known as God's Chorus. So important for parish leadership to consider about renovation. We need to support young families, that is both in the worship space and just adjacent to the worship space, so that when it is appropriate to get up with a young child who's feeling restless, that there's place to do so and still participate. Including space for nursing mothers. If we want the church to grow younger, which it needs to do, we need to attract and support younger families. That's how we will grow, otherwise we'll just get older and grayer. Also make sure that we have emphasis for the hearing impaired section that would potentially be larger in the new space, but to...
Actually, the whole church would be in a hearing group, so it wouldn't matter where you would sit. The whole thing would be hearing.
And then some additional options for those with physical disabilities, especially in wheelchairs, to not just have to go to the front, but to have space in the rear, which is probably better in and out for bathrooms, etc., including space to be roughed out and to be completed when funds become available for restrooms in the narthex, not just down the hallway down here. The large crucifix, either suspended above or behind the altar, very important. Kneelers, we thought were important. Multiple avenues for egress so that we're not bottlenecked through just 2 sets of doors. Higher ceilings. Full stop. Vaulted high ceilings.
How many exclamation points?
So it raises our spirits up. Emphasis on Our Lady of Guadalupe. And then finally, some thoughts on the capital campaign. And on number 4, this is a direct quote: our community is generally supportive, so there's cautious optimism that this can be reached. Some back of the napkin math, we're talking about on average $2,000 to $3,000 per family over 3 years seems feasible. That's not to be expected of every family, but putting it in that dollar figure, that's based on 1,400 families, right? So we're growing. This is the right time to do this. I shared my experience in 2020 and 2021. We could not have thought about doing this at that time. The numbers were down, collections were down, and what a difference 4 years makes. And then finally, don't hire the St. Thomas sound system designer.
That's a tough act to follow. My name is Dave, and I had the honor of being with a great table in the back. We went from 2 to 35 years, 25 years and 7 years as members of the parish. A lot of the same issues came up for us: community, the welcoming nature of our parish, the simplicity of our church are all things that attracted people to come here. You know, love the idea of the changing icons with the seasons within the church itself that happen. A lot of families attend, extended families come here. So people have come here because of extended families, parents, grandparents, etc. And it's just not stuffy. I think that's really a feature that a lot of folks said. You go to some very old churches and they just feel very stuffy and very closed, and we have a very open community. So that seemed to be a lot of the feedback on what they liked the most. A lot of what we talked about are things that were really questions on the what's in and what's out. Is 4 million realistic? When you think about the requirements and everything that needs to be done, what are you really getting for that? And a lot of our discussion was, could we keep it simple still? Would we still have windows to enjoy God and nature as part of the worship? What specifically is inside the package for that 4 million? And we also mentioned a very important item that came from the back of the room: no carpeted floors, because they're an absolute mess to keep clean. So if we could come up with some other flooring, there would be a lot of consensus around that. And obviously sound came up too, is that we don't want a sound system with a lot of echo in it. You know, could we have doors that don't echo in the hallways? You know, could things like that all be part of the restoration? So, you know, what happens to all of the altar? What happens to the pews? Are we reusing anything as part of the process? So obviously looking at more details, what can we do long-term for operating costs? You know, is geothermal part of this? Is there other things to consider that could be added that long-term have a benefit, are things we wanted? Keeping the Blessed Sacrament as a part of it, it's, you know, right now it feels a little bit like an add-on where it sits in the front, making it part of the new altar we feel is important. And, you know, can you really do it for $4 million? So these were all things that came up at our table. And then, you know, a bigger question is, if you're going only to 600 and we're growing as much as we are with townhomes and apartments in this community, are we going to need 800 in 5 years? I mean, is that really enough capacity for $4.5 million to consider? So, and we also talked about parking, security, all of those things. So I think that's really the big items, and without being redundant with everybody else, but you know, again, a lot of it's just more information I think would be helpful.
Sorry.
All right, so my table ranged, I'm Missy by the way, my table ranged from 2 years to 39 years of being parishioners. Like everyone else said, my table loved the community that cares about the greater community, the diversity, the music, and overall just the vibrant faith of all the members. What's important for us was acoustics. My table wanted to keep things in the round, not just be spaced evenly across. The general feeling is, would Jesus want to worship there if he walked in? Does he feel loved? Does he feel comfortable? Is it warm and welcoming? They wanted a beautiful simplicity versus something very fancy and ornate. They don't want the statues and the art to overtake the people and the altar. And consider families, as other people have said, we are growing and we love the families that are here. We want the kids to feel welcome. They're going to be wiggly, they're going to cry. So sound absorption, we like the carpet at our table, sorry to the other tables. And just understanding that kids will be kids and try to make them feel comfortable and loved in the space. Overall, we feel the new space might be a little too formal for what our vibe is here at Incarnation. We also kind of feel that some of the decisions may have already been made, so how much say is the community really going to have? And consider the impact on the environment. So can we use solar panels, natural lighting, etc., to try to save some of the energy? And our feedback for the crucifix is that we want a realistic Jesus, not a super muscly Jesus. Good evening, everyone. My table.
Just two things. One, we did, in looking to get more seating, we did look at, what it would be like to keep confrontational seating, but the architect said basically we would have to take out at least 2 walls and expand the church size to be able to keep in that confrontational seating. So that's something we did look at, but it would bump up to about $6 million to be able to keep that same look but expand the size. The other thing too is we are working with a company called EcoSave, and they're looking at how we can save money with power and utilities, and also help us to afford the equipment. They have estimated that they could see savings to 20 to 30%. They are looking at geothermal, they are looking at solar, and they are looking at potentially putting charging stations for electric vehicles and monetizing that on our property as well. So I'm just saying that, I just want to make sure you knew we were addressing some of those things. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. My table, they've been here for 5 years, 2 months, 10 years, less than a year. And they attend Incarnation because warm sense of community is amazing. The sound system is good. And it's the home of the Filipino community. I'm so happy. Thank you, Maria, for leaving. Second question is, why do you attend Incarnation and what do you like the most? Monsignor Keeley is great in delivering his homily. The diversity, and it's like a home for some. And what is important for the parish leadership to consider about the renovated worship center is the kneelers, glass dividers for kids, and one doesn't care the noise of the kids. And anything else you feel is important to share is the fundraising and the solar panel for tax rental purposes. What else do we have here? And the one request is a family yearbook and a directory for all members and the family members to put pictures. And they are willing to pay. I think that's all I have on the. Thank you.
I have that amazing table over there in the back. We are a group with 14 years up to 44 years here at Incarnation. We love the vibrant and warm feeling that we have at Incarnation. We love that we are a multi-generational church where we have young people and we can grow old here. And you could see that in the faces of our parishioners and those we welcome in our doors. We love the ministries we have here. We love the body of Christ, and by that we mean the parishioners that make up our community. What's the most important what is the most important for parish leadership to consider about the renovation? We would love beauty and simplicity. We want a sense of the sacred. We'd love it to have a great logistics as well as sound plan in place. The flow of the church, the ability for people to get in and out, the consideration for, how people prepare for our masses and how we clean up, before and after. Because we have right now, the people that prepare are not young. And I only say that because
Let's go with the height of the candles.
well, there's the height of the candle, as well as, if we're adding some more rows and distance, it's just, and it's gonna get heavier because we're gonna have a lot more people in our hair. We need more chalices. So just to put all of those considerations in place, we would love it if the sacristy was really part of the worship center, so that exact concern would not be an issue. We love the music at our church. And so where are our musicians? Where's our choir? Where's all of that? And so to make that part of our consideration, which goes back to our sound. We're gonna have a new HVAC system, which means the sound is gonna be a little different, to consider that with the overall sound in our parishes. So when it's on, can we hear each other? The other thing is, I know there was I think Mark said, tall ceilings, and one of the comments in our group was not tall ceilings. Right, and I think that the thing about that is what we don't want is that feeling, we don't want to lose that feeling that we get when we come to church. It's warm, it's vibrant, we can see each other, we can feel each other, and we don't want to lose that by having something big, something distant, something vast that makes us feel far apart. Anything else you feel is important? We also like the plan. There was a lot of consideration and hard work put in, and you can see that reflected. The parking, and we're not talking about parking specifically, we have a concern about the safety of getting in and out of our driveways, because it seems that our road is getting more busy, and if we are ourselves putting more people on that road after our masses and before our masses, we just have a general concern about that. Again, the plan for the sacristy is really important, and we have more parishioners, and so the bathrooms need to be moved up on the priority list. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Marta. We've had, at my wonderful table over here, we've had parishioners that are here 2, 5, 11, and 37 years. Why do you attend Incarnation, and what do you like most? Really like the priests here now. We've raised our family here, made friends here, enjoyed the masses, the choir and the music. At first, found things a little bit different, but after going around visiting other churches in the area, we defaulted back to here and adapted. We also enjoy the very welcoming and friendly congregation. The ministries came initially to, one person stated, came initially for prayer, but felt the warmth and familiarity in the worship, and decided to join the different ministries because of that. Also came to Mass because of the liturgy as well. What is most important for the parish leadership to consider? Most important, following the rules and getting into compliance with the diocesan suggestions. Also, things that were initially built perhaps with a different mindset to progress to perhaps maybe a more liturgically reflective of our religion without losing the warmth and the friendliness of the people or the body of Christ here at the parish. Also, increasing capacity, closer confessionals, holy water fonts by the door. We are kind of missing the crucifix. We would like a crucifix over the altar. We enjoy the central direction to sacredness. We like the kneelers, the statues of St. Joseph, Blessed Mother, St. Anthony. We like a stained glass window if possible. A crying room if possible. And please leave the baptismal font as is if possible.
Yeah, that is part of the plan, not to touch the baptismal font.
Yeah, and as far as the crying room, not to separate the children, it would just have be like a glass divider so they're still apart, like they're watching in real time and participating. Someone suggested an altar rail if possible. Anything else you feel is important to share? Hoping that with the kneelers, maybe a little more, like once they're installed, that uniformity can be created so that those that choose to kneel might not have their vision obstructed of the consecration during the Mass. Parking spaces need more lighting and or security, more spaces if possible. Having police officer direct traffic, if that's all a possibility after Mass for outgoing traffic. Have a room for getting dressed or ready for weddings, quinceañeras, etc. And finally, thanks to Monsignor, Deacon Mark, Tony for all of your efforts in providing.
For those that don't know me, I'm Deacon Jay, not Deacon Mark, by the way.
For those who confuse the two of us.
Can you see the difference? Okay. Salt, pepper.
Not the rap group.
Indeed. So our table was pretty diverse. We had myself 10 months, and all the way back to, what did you say, Herb, prehistoric? Because you were here before Incarnation Parish existed. So there was a wide range of experience here. And there was a pretty diverse group of comments that came in as well. While we recognize the need for renovation, there is concern that we not lose the community that we currently have, the strength. Those that have been here a while especially are here. One of the reasons they're here is because they look out and they see the body of Christ surrounding them. So the concern was that the new architecture not overly inhibit that sense of community. People are here because of the community. People are here because this is a welcoming parish. People are here because it's vibrant. And the concern is that we not grow into something that takes away from what brought them here in the first place. Crying room, yes. Everybody loves kids and everybody wants the children to be there because, as it's been said, they are the future of the church. Young families is who we need here each and every Sunday, and they need to feel welcome. But it's a mix, because at the same time, young families whose children act up may not come because they feel that they'll disrupt the Mass. Whereas if they had the opportunity for a quieting room, where they're still part of the Mass, where they can take the child when they act up and then bring them back out when they're calmed down, they're more likely to attend on a regular basis. So that was one of the pieces that came up. The welcoming nature of the community at each of the services. You know, I'm blessed to attend all the Masses on a regular basis, and each is somewhat unique, but at the same time, all of them share that welcoming spirit when you come through the door. You know, it's like, we're glad you're here. And it permeates everything about this parish. And I just want to make sure that as we move forward, we not lose that. The other concern that was voiced was that we are very strongly focused right now on justice and charity ministries here in the parish. And they wanted to ensure that those were not eclipsed by the need for the capital campaign. And that was, I think, the primary information and comments that came out of our table. Thank you.
Just on that last point, because it has been an issue that's been on the frequently answered questions. One, as pastor, I'm committed to tithing our income for the poor. And I'll give you an example. Our budget is set at $1.3 million for next year. And we have for charity budgeted $131,000. That doesn't count second collections that also go to other outside groups that we support beyond our capacity here. And all of that money is spoken for. So none of that money can ever be touched to deal with the capital campaign or debt or things like that. And so I understand where that issue may have come in people's minds, but it's kind of a false issue because of how our monies are structured. Okay? So I just wanted to make sure we covered that. But I want to thank you all very much for being here today. Are there any final questions or anything? I want to thank all the tables for everything you've done. We went a little bit longer than the Spanish group. You all talked more. But Anything else? Yes?
Are the furnishings from the new church included in the $4.5 million budget?
They would be, in terms of that. There are certain things that are, not a lot of you see it, but our altar is chipped and repaired with plastic resin. It's not, and so I would like to try to preserve that altar by making it part of a restored cemetery and putting an altar so that we could have it outside and be able to celebrate Mass outside and add columbariums and add mausoleum, which would be financed entirely different. No money would be borrowed for that, but then it would allow us to do, somehow save that altar and be able to use it. But right now, if you get a chance to look at it and go up close, it's chipped, it's repaired with, like I say, plastic resin in places. So it needs help. But I want to be able to honor it and use it. The ambo would be maybe not quite as massive because it would need to fit in the space. And so it's a matter of, to make the space in the sanctuary more navigable, it probably would need to be it was still prominent, but not quite as massive as it is right now. And but does that answer your question? Okay. There would be no change in the baptistry. The baptistry would stay the same. So, and then the altar in that picture, it seemed a little bit back too far. That's better. That one kind of shows it a little bit more into the sanctuary. I was not pleased. It seemed to me that it was too far back in the other plan. So, okay. Any other questions?
Yeah. Since you have the diagram up, so where's is the sacristy stand where it is, or?
No. Well, the sacristy. There's a couple different options. The work sacristy probably will stay where it is, but we possibly could put a prep table in that square space around so that we could stage some things in there without putting the full work sacristy there. Then the priest sacristy would be down here, and then the current priest sacristy would have multiple purposes. I would see it as a better solution for our servers to get vested, but also a place for brides because of the bathroom there, for brides to get dressed and things like that. And I'm sure that they would appreciate the bathroom. You can always put in a big mirror, which is the other thing you need for a bride's room. So, yes?
About the crucifix,
Mm-hmm.
would that be something that we would get to vote on, or would there be like options that we could choose, or how would that?
Well, I think we would look at some proposals together. One of the proposals, I have a very good friend who's the senior painting instructor for the Florence Academy of Art. And he's proposed a solution where the cross itself and the corpus would be three-dimensional, but the painting behind it would be done in fresco. That would be the tree of life, and kind of going for the care of creation and the connection between creation and the cross. So, I mean, there are some concepts that are out there, but we would certainly look at that in the future. I've just asked, as we go forward, our current statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe is made of resin, and it's hollow. It's not really a worthy statue. You know, it's normally a worthy statue would be marble or wood. And so my hope is that that statue would be made out of wood and then polychromed. And then the St. Joseph would be similarly sized and similarly constructed so that they would balance each other. So, yes?
So since you brought up statues, I just want to ask.
Oh, the Hispanic community wants statues everywhere in the church.
So not to be for the home team.
And you want to
The Filipino community has our Santo Niño.
yeah.
So
I'm very, it's part of the feedback, how to both put images and stained glass and then at the same time keep everything simple. I'm trying to figure that one out myself. But I'm hearing all of that feedback together, okay? But I do hear it, okay? Any other questions, comments? Okay. Well, let's say a prayer then. And again, thank you. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be,